which would get you closer. I don't know if it would necessarily improve it by that much, though.
Is that any better, Chloe?
If you do what? Sorry.
Oh, Tony just moved it a little closer. Did that make any difference?
It's a little bit closer.
Yeah, looks like
Just squeeze on it.
it's like a hole in the back. I just fell through.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think that's as close as we can get. Now, if I'm looking this way, Chloe, does it look like I'm looking at people?
Yeah, I mean, it's so small that it's not, like, I think, I guess, do you
The
want
other
to be
thing is
looking
because
like
you're sharing your screen. So sharing your screen doesn't show them this large. So they're just seeing a small portion of you, and then they're seeing the red border or what's within the red border.
Okay.
So that's also playing into you looking small.
I think it's probably fine. And we can just keep that in mind for next time of
Okay.
maybe readjusting that.
You could stop sharing,
Mhm.
not share, and then do your introduction and then go to share. You just need to make sure that you include computer audio, and I can.
That's okay. I don't want to mess it up.
Okay.
I won't mess anything up.
All right.
I'm too nervous about that.
Understandable.
And then Chloe, are you going to record?
Yep, I'm recording.
Oh, you're recording now. Okay.
And I don't know if you want these extra lights, but they can be turned on, but
Yeah.
they're a little bright.
That's a hard no. I'm gonna need sunglasses for those.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted right now?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Feel free to message us, call us, whatever you need. Chloe, if you need us, you can holler at us as well, and we'll pop around the corner and do whatever we can.
Okay. Should we
Okay.
start admitting people, Jamie, since it's 2:30?
Yep, and I'm gonna put it on chat on my phone too, just as an extra layer of seeing it.
Okay.
All right,
I
thanks,
am
guys.
admitting. Thanks, Dustin.
Okay,
And whoever else is there. Sorry.
it was Tony.
Tony. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds like I think they're getting on here.
We are getting on. Hello, everybody. So while we are waiting for people to join, we have a couple housekeeping items. Make sure you are on mute and your cameras are off so that we don't slow down any technology issues. And then go ahead and type in chat what location you are from and whether or not it's cool enough to have pumpkin spice lattes or apple cider donuts or anything where you're at. And just type that in chat while we are waiting for everybody to join. We are going to give ourselves just a couple of minutes for everybody to log in, and then we will get started.
What?
Are you actually talking? You're actually talking to someone. Go hang in there.
So as people are joining, those housekeeping items are to make sure you are on mute, your camera is off, and then we're just typing in chat where we're from and how cool the weather is, basically. Maybe it's chilly, but maybe an iced one. Thank you, Katie. So here in Phoenix, it is a bit warm, but maybe a nice one for us as well. I'm gonna give it one more minute. Anchorage, Alaska, definitely chilly enough. Oh, that sounds lovely. Gorgeous and 75 degrees. Very nice. See, Tiffany's having an iced pumpkin latte now. Sounds yummy. Ooh, we got up to 70 in Virginia. Okay, I am going to give it one more minute just because we are letting so many people in, and then we will go ahead and get started. A cold caramel crunch, Maureen, yum. I think here in the valley, we like to pretend it is cool enough for fall while we're waiting for it to cool off. Okay, I'm going to let a few more people in too.
There it is.
Hello, thank you for joining us. We have a couple housekeeping items, just that we ask everybody to have their cells on mute and cameras off so that we don't slow down any speeds while we do this. Thank you. Okay, while people are still joining, I am going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today. This is Foundation for Blind Children's webinar. We are talking today about FVA, or Functional Vision Assessment Best Practices. My name is Jamie Pacadere, and I have with me today Chloe Ranshaw, and she is helping manage the chat. So she will be there managing the chat. So if you have something, go ahead and...
Sí, no, lo único que yo le dije fue que no se habían logrado por lo que yo había escuchado.
Is anyone else hearing that extra noise?
Cada uno seguía
Yes.
en su posición.
Okay.
I think it's Nancy's
Y bueno,
audio,
eso nada más.
Nancy
Y vos
Ramirez.
le dijiste que
Okay, just a reminder to make sure that you're putting your
bueno, lo de siempre. A ver si
device
no-
on mute and your
digamos, otro
cameras
trabajo.
off, please. Thank you. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we are talking today about FVA best practices. So let's get started on this. So today we are going to discuss the purpose of an FVA, the do's and the don'ts, best practices, strategies, tools and materials, and then at the end we'll have some time for questions and answers. Okay, so we do have a Jamboard. Chloe, can you put the link to the Jamboard in our chat for everybody? So here we have a Jamboard. So as we're getting ready to do this webinar, I want you to think about a key idea. What is it that you're hoping to take away from this presentation today? So I am going to go over to our Jamboard. Actually, we are going to do the key ideas. So on our Jamboard, we have what would you like to learn today? So if you're familiar with Jamboard, you can go over to the left of the screen, click on your sticky note, and then type in what is it that you would like to learn today. So it might be a new ideas for assessments, might be one. So go ahead and just take a minute and put it up on our Jamboard. So Chloe, were you able to get that link into the chat?
Yep, it's posted.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So I will give everybody a minute. Click on that link and start putting in some ideas.
Jamie, it says that they need access.
Need access. What about if I copy it, Chloe? Okay. This work now? Okay, does that work for everybody?
People are saying no, they still need
No?
access.
Okay, so I don't want to waste our time having it work. So go ahead and type your ideas into chat, and then we will go through some of those because I do not want to waste our time trying to get it to work. I apologize for that.
So Jamie, if I can make a suggestion for you.
Sure.
So if you're on the Jamboard where you go up to share, once that comes up, there's a small box that when you copy that link, but you may need to like click on the user down there and saying anyone with this link can access the Jamboard. We had to do that with some of ours as well.
That's what it's saying. Only people with access can open the link, or the FBC one.
I think you would want the other one.
Yep, that's what we had it on, is this one. Yep, that's the way we have it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the tip. I'm not sure why it's not working today, but thank you. Okay, so type into chat what it is that you want to take away from this today, and then keep that in mind. So as we are going through, see if that you start to get some ideas and some inspiration for that. So some of the things we have are more info about doing FVAs, being a brand new TVI, and then a refresher course. Refreshers are always nice, I think. And then some new exciting materials to use. So just start to keep that in mind. What would be meaningful for you? And then look for that as we go through this. So thank you for your patience with our Jamboard and putting it into chat. Okay, so the other thing we have in Google Docs and we are going to share with you is the power of threes. So as you're going through today, start to look for 3 tools, 3 teaching strategies, and 3 engagement ideas. So this will be sent to you along with the PowerPoint later, but just think those things in mind. What are 3 takeaways from this presentation, or 3 things that will start to stand out to you or be meaningful for you with your students? So the purpose of an FVA, it's really for the IEP team to use the results to determine eligibility for special education services. This is how our students are qualifying for special education services for visual impairments. And so the information that you gather from it is really, really important to share with the team. It helps you identify those necessary accommodations and interventions that would be beneficial to the student, that would help them be more successful in their education. It helps you determine IEP goals and gives you that data that you need to then write those goals. It also allows you to identify the focus of your specially designed instruction. So that SDI of really what is the TVI or the teacher of the visually impaired working on. And it is required by IDEA from 2004. So I put those links in there for you to share, or for you to have if you need to share the purpose of the FVA with the team. Sometimes IEP teams aren't incredibly familiar with it, and so this is always helpful to just be able to go back to the source. So the do's of an FVA. Some things you really want to keep in mind are to identify a space and a time to do the evaluation. It's very difficult if you show up to a school or a home and you haven't found out where you're going to do it or the time you're going to do it. So work on identifying that space and that time that you're going to be spending doing your evaluation. You want to select developmentally appropriate assessment tools. So this is different than age-appropriate assessment tools because we're working on finding out what their vision is like functionally. So you want to meet them where they're at developmentally. This one is a really big one. Communicate to the student about what you were doing and why. So however old the student is, however what types of disabilities they have, tell them what they're doing. Our kiddos tend to get tired of being assessed or being tested or being questioned. And so let them know how it's going to help them, how it's beneficial to them, and why you're really doing it. Another good one is to take detailed notes. You might think you'll remember at the end of the assessment, but you may not. Sometimes it helps to develop your own little shorthand or have a really good template that you can follow, but put in those notes for things that you're not going to remember at the end. Try to do it in an hour or less. You're probably not going to get through your whole assessment during this time, but any longer than that, and the student's going to be really fatigued. They're going to be tired. You're not going to get the best information out of them. We also don't want to pull our kiddos out from class any longer than necessary. So keep that in mind as you're doing it. Communicate to the team that is going to happen. If you're an itinerant teacher, let that general education or that special education teacher know ahead of time that you're doing it so they can plan accordingly. Another one is to really be prepared. You want to walk in ready to go. So have all of your templates ready for you to take notes on. all of the materials ready. It's really ideal if you can go into that space a few minutes before the assessment and lay out all of your things, have them in order, so that when you are doing the assessment, you're not digging around in your bag or your box trying to find your things. And then you really need to know the student's eye condition and any other additional disabilities they may have before the assessment. This is going to allow you to plan for the assessment ahead of time. So you really want to know what the student has. Some more things to remember is conduct observations throughout the student's day. So the FVA, you're going to have the actual assessment time, but you also need observations of the student. So try to catch them during different times of the day doing different activities. If you're able to, take pictures of how the student is using their vision. This is really nice. When you're writing up the report, it gives you a really good visual to share with the rest of the team of what it looks like. And then engage students to be active participants in their session or in their assessment. And so the more that they can feel like they're contributing to it and showing what works for them and what doesn't work for them, you're going to have a more successful assessment. So some preparation. Things that you want to keep in mind is preparing yourself for the assessment. So this might look like wearing a solid color shirt. We don't want to have busy clothing on, pattern clothing on that can be distracting or that can make it harder for our students to work on what they're learning. Be aware of you. So jewelry that you may have, IDs, lanyards, keys that may be distracting. Do you make a lot of noise when you're moving because your keys are jangling or your jewelry is really shiny or your ID is in the way? So pay attention to that and remove some of those if you can. Make sure you have a clear assessment space. I like to have a space where I'm working with the student and then another space for all of my materials. That way your stuff isn't interfering with the student's assessment. Again, have everything prepped and ready for use. And then be aware of the lighting, the noise, clutter in the room, distractions. Ideally, we would like to do our assessments in a room where there aren't other things happening. But if they are, be aware of those things, take notes of those things, and see how much you can reduce so that you can concentrate more on your student. Okay, because our Jamboard is not working the best, name an effective strategy that you would use to engage students during an assessment. So something that you have found that works really well, that's meaningful, that engages your student. And feel free to turn off your mic and say it or to type it into our chat.
What?
I'll give everybody a minute. Try to make it fun. Yep. It doesn't need to be like a test or difficult or scary. Thank you, Gabe.
Where's chat?
Chat.
There we go.
Okay. Incorporate objects, toys, or other elements that pique their interest. Yeah, use things that they enjoy and that they appreciate. A use of toys. Thank you, Mike. Even older kids like them. Yep, kids like toys. So find those toys and you can learn a lot from their vision. Another one says use some slick toys. Highlights magazine as a way to engage kids in part of the assessment. Kids tend to like fun magazines. So that is a good one. Thank you. Well, Kathleen, I like this one. So call them by their name, keep it light, and not a lot of talking when necessary. That's a really good point. Backing off on the talking. Our students with visual impairments tend to be talked to and talked at a lot. So cutting back on some of that talking. Build rapport. That's good with stickers. Stickers are very motivating. Even adults like stickers. I really like this one, Grace. Thank you. Having a conversation beforehand that has nothing to do with the assessment. Get them comfortable and treat them as a person before jumping into the assessment. I think that's a big one, just giving them a chance to relax and not stress about it. energy to meet them where they are. High energy, but not overwhelming. It's a good point. You guys have really great strategies. These are all really good ideas. Okay, some things not to do. We don't want to rush through the evaluation. We often have a very limited time to do it, and sometimes we're just trying to get it all done. So try to take your time, not rush through. If you have to come back, then you'll have to come back. And I know that isn't always ideal, but it is better than rushing through the evaluation. You want to make sure you're not only using toys or craft supplies. Those, I think, are huge in an FVA, and they're really, really helpful, but you do need to use some standardized tools as well. So making sure you have a good mix of fun stuff with the standardized tools so that you can get a really good picture of your learner. Not testing, trying again, or following up because of difficult student behavior or responses. Sometimes our kids aren't in the mood. They're not cooperating, they're not complying, or sometimes they're having a really hard time seeing it, and so they're giving up. And so you want to try it again. You may want to put that assessment to the side and do a different one, but you want to try it a few times, because what we don't want to say is unable to assess. Well, we want to assess them. Let's find a different way to do it, even if you have to come back. Guessing information. Don't want to guess information. Everything we're writing in there, you want to make sure that you got it either through the observation, direct testing, or an interview. And then using information from the last FVA or LMA as your full report. It's always helpful to look back on that document, but you don't want to use it as your full report. Typically, you're going to be doing this, or the child will be receiving this every 3 years, depending on how often this kiddos move through teachers. You want to have really fresh, updated, meaningful information. I like to not read the FVA or the LMA until after I've done my assessment and then go back and read it, so that I am giving it straightly based off observations that I've had or the testing that I'm receiving, so that I'm not influenced by the previous test. Then I'll go back and look at it and see what changes there were.
Hey, Jamie, there's a question. Yes. What is an LMA?
I am so sorry. An LMA is a learning media assessment. Often people will do a learning media assessment as part of or with the functional vision assessment. The learning media assessment tells us the size font that a student may be using, their primary sensory learning channel, whether it is vision, auditory, tactile. So that tells us how they can access their print materials, their educational materials. The functional vision assessment tells us how they're using their vision. Great question. Thank you, Chloe. Some best practices, things that are really ideal for our learners. The functional vision assessment needs to integrate clinical data with the FVA and the LMA, the learning media information. So what that means is we need to have information from the ophthalmology report and possibly an optometry report. You might have clinical low vision evaluation, but you need to have that data in there from the ophthalmologist or the optometrist, in addition to the information that you collect. It should be done at least every 3 years as part of the student's initial evaluation or re-evaluation for special education services. It should include an assessment of all the required elements. There are very specific elements of the FVA that you need to do, and it should have assessments of all of those areas. Should be a thorough assessment. You really want to know how that student is functionally using their vision throughout their day, and detailed, accurate information. So instead of writing the student demonstrates shift of gaze, you might describe how they're demonstrating shift of gaze. Are they simply turning their eyes, or do they need to turn their head? That's a big difference. So describe exactly what's happening instead of a broad description of it. So those things that must be in there. Acuity needs to be in an FVA. So it needs to be near acuity, which is the 16 inches or closer. Some intermediate tasks. Not everything is right at those 16 inches. So the 16 inches to 3 feet. And some distance tasks, which is more than 3 feet away. You want to look at all of those ocular motor functions. So if they have the shift of gaze, if their eyes converge, if they're scanning, if they're tracking. So all of those things on how their eyes are working. And then those functional activities, their depth perception, their color perception, if they have difficulties with contrast. You want to make sure you have that clinical and ophthalmology information we talked about. Direct observations. It's really good to take them to an area and do the assessments, but it's also very meaningful when you're watching them in their educational environment and how they're using their vision when they are in a noisy classroom, or when they are trying to look at the board and look at their paper, or when the lights are really bright in the classroom. So those direct observations are very, very helpful.
Hey, Jamie.
Interviews, yes.
Another question that pertains to the clinical and ophthalmology information. Tiffany asked, what do you do, or how do you make it clear to parents or guardians that you need those medical reports besides asking again and getting a HIPAA?
Besides asking again, that's really where you're going to lean on your special education director or the special education teacher in the school, whoever you're working closer with, because without that report, you can't typically qualify the student for those services. So I would lean on the administrators to say, I need to get a copy of this report. Some schools will allow you, or they will send home a request of information that the parent can sign, and then you or the school can turn it into the eye doctor, and the eye doctor will directly send over the report. So sometimes that is a way, but I would always urge you to go to the administration and get some help getting it. Okay, the next one is interviews with the teacher, whether it's the general education teacher or the special education teacher. And then if possible, interviews with the student, and then your formal testing. Okay. So those assessment tools that you are using, some things to really keep in mind. Assessment tools may be informal and formal. So the informal ones might be all of the different toys that you're using, the craft supplies that you're using, things around in the classroom or the space that you're in. And then your formal one would be those standardized assessments. We'll talk about those in the next slide. As the student gets older, you may need to do more formal standardized assessment tools. This might be more appropriate. The littles really do really well with the more informal ones, and then a couple of standardized ones like the teller cards or the Leah symbols. Our older kiddos might be ready to do those more standardized tools. The student's familiarity with the assessment tool may affect the results or with the assessment. If they've seen these materials before, they may feel more confident. They know what is expected of them. They know what to do. They know how to participate. So it may make them more engaged with it. So that sometimes can also help just as they use it more. This also helps sometimes just to practice with them. And you may need to try different tools that will achieve the same purpose. If you have lots of different toys in your FVA kit, or different tools to test color or acuity or contrast, you can still get the same purpose, but you may have to try a few of them to do so. So some strategies, we talked about some of those strategies that you guys are using to engage your students. Some more are to tell the student what you're doing and why. And that's really helpful at the beginning, but then it's helpful as you go through the assessment also. What is the purpose of this test? What is the purpose of this test? And so that way they know what it is that you're looking for. Involve them as much as possible. Sometimes it's fun if the student is able, if they test you and you read the acuity chart, or you sit there and do the color matching or the contrast one. Offer incentives and rewards. I know kids will be very motivated by stickers, or if you have little tiny rewards for them and they know they can get that at the end, that is always helpful. Try not to frustrate them, make them feel like they failed or are doing it wrong. They have a visual impairment, and so all of the things you're going to be doing isn't going to necessarily show good functional vision. So what we don't want them to do is feel bad about the assessment or make them feel like I can't do it or I'm not doing a good job. So even if they're struggling with it, you can take a break, you can move on, you can say, that's okay, this doesn't work for you. Now we know, let's do something different. So you don't have to deny that it's not working, but don't make them feel badly because they can't read the second line on the eye chart or on the eye chart. Be engaging. You want to act like it's a fun activity for them to do, motivate them to do it, really be right there with them. And sometimes it's also helpful if you model the assessment tool, the test, or the activity that you're doing. So show them how to do it, show them what's expected. Okay, so some formal tools that you may or may not have access to where you're at, but these ones are good to have in your FVA kit. One of them might be the near visual acuity chart. The other one is the Feinblum distance acuity, the Leah symbols distance acuity, teller cards, hiding Heidi, the pom-pom acuity test, color vision test plates. And then a tool for you to really look into is to go on TSBVI and look for tools of the trade. And this is probably the best one that encompasses everything that you should use in an FVA. Okay, so what are some informal tools and materials that you might want to have in your kit? Black backgrounds are huge. So however you can create a black background, a black working space, high contrast. So this might be a Wheatley board. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Wheatley board, but it just opens and it's got black felt on it that's usually used for O&M activities. This is great for your contrast. The APH Invisi boards, the old school looking trifold science type boards, a black cloth. So anything that you can get that black material to present information on is very helpful. Pen lights. Mylar materials of any kind. So think balloons, pinwheels, pom-poms, strips of Mylar. Mylar is really good. Light up toys and materials. This is also helpful. Water or glitter toys can be very motivating. Patterned paper or pattern book. Someone had mentioned the Highlights magazine, and that can be really helpful to have that busyness. We want to see what they can pull out from that busyness. And then some craft supplies that you can do just about anything with are those pom-poms, the pipe cleaners, feathers, wiki sticks. So these are good general things as you're starting to build your FVA kit to have in there. Okay, so here in a minute, we are going to watch a short video of a student working on the assignment. The way the student is working on this assignment may or may not be ideal, but what we're looking for is this might be an example of an observation that you would do in a school district. So what information can you gather from this observation? So I want you to just watch. What can you get from it? How would you use this to determine your assessment tools? And what would you do differently? So just some things to keep in mind as you're watching it, and then we'll come back and talk about it a little bit. So let me click over to that. All right, here we go.
I'm gonna spell your name. Okay. Grandma's gonna put it down. And you give me an A, please. How about an L? L. 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 Good job. E. 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 Okay. X. 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 Good job. A. I know, another A. A. Good job. N. 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 Yeah, good one. D. 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 Yeah. Ooh, good job. R. R. In the red basket you go. And we're going to do A again. Can you find the A? A. All right. And guess what?
Okay. So let me go back to our slide. So either type, you couldn't see the video. Could anybody else see the video?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so either type in chat or feel free to answer one of these questions. What information did you get? Or how would you use it to determine your assessment tools? Or what would you have liked to have seen the teacher do differently? So what information were you able to gather from this assessment or from this observation about the student? Okay, so Kate has an idea to keep the basket stationary, and you could observe reach and depth activities. That is a great one. Why was she guiding the kiddo's arm? That's another one. When we go and we observe students in classrooms, sometimes those things come up. I can't really tell you why she was guiding her arm, but that would be a good question to ask the teacher. Why are you guiding her arm during the activity? What benefit are you getting from that? Don't use the same pattern of back and forth. Yep. This is great, Mike. So knowing print size, this is the print size that she's used to using, reaching for the object, and you'd like to see how she did with smaller letters. So that really gives you a jumping off point. We know this bigger size is working. Would a smaller size font work for her or not? Very helpful. She did well with high background contrast and with black and white large letters. So that's good information that you can gather from the student. The high contrast is working, the black and white is working. So you've got some good information. Wait time. Wait time is huge. We could do lots of training on wait time before asking for the letter. Yep. Trying a field of 3 also. That's good too, to find out, is she able to see from a field of 3 or maybe even a field of 4, and complexity for that one. Glare did not initially seem to impede ability to access and further test. That's a great point. Glare doesn't seem to be bothering her. Will it bother her later or not in this situation? And can she maintain accuracy in smaller size font? Mary Beth, this one's also good. A larger field. Yes. And you could see that she was shifting from the right or the left. These are really good answers. So when you're watching your students in their setting, all of that information can help you as you're getting ready to do your assessments. So as you're doing your direct observations, try to keep some of those things in mind. What am I getting from this observation? So instead of having maybe just a running list, what really are you getting? Then how is this going to help you choose your assessment tools when you go back? And then what would you have done differently? And then go ahead and try it differently and see if you get a different result. Okay, so I have a couple of resources on here that you can also access. So we have a little bit of time for question and answers. I know we had a little bit of hiccups and some technical difficulties in the handouts that Chloe is going to send. We have a couple of them for you. So Chloe is going to send you a copy of the PowerPoint from today, and then access to the worksheet that gives you the power of 3s. So if you go back to thinking about what you thought at the beginning, What were you able to pick out from this that was meaningful or helpful to you? And really think on what you would like to use to implement going forward. So go ahead and type that in chat. What would be helpful for you to use from this training going forward? And then what questions do you have from today? Okay, if we do not have any questions, Chloe, do you have any questions coming up in chat?
Nope, I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so Chloe is going to share those materials with you. We will work on getting you correct access to them.
William did ask for opportunity for offline conversation.
Sure, that will be, yeah, go ahead and stick around for a second, please, William, after we are all done. All right, thank you, everybody.